Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last 4 years, we have been dedicating ourselves to les filles du roi and les filles mariées, the king's daughters and the marriageable girls. And so we really are trying to identify and kind of get to know each one of these remarkable women because they do get lost to history and they immediately kind of blend into the family surname, and we don't really know who this extraordinary woman who began the family was and where she came from. And I think that was the impetus of my beginning first episode ever of this channel, is I wanted to get to know who was this woman. And enough has been written about the men. It was time for the women. So I sort of went, okay, let's do it. And it kind of grew out of that. We are now in episode 332, so we've explored a lot of these ladies. I hope you will take the opportunity to go on my website, How Roots Will Travel, because there's an index there of everything I've done before. You can always search it on YouTube as well. And also, before we proceed, let me show you 3 things that I'd love for you to do. The first is subscribe, and then like. Each video needs a like because that video gets promoted, that sort of thing. And notify is just for you because then you can absolutely, absolutely get notified every time I post a new video. Also, we also have memberships that you can join, and we also have PayPal on my website that you can donate to. Lots of ways to support the channel itself. So thank you to all of you who have helped, and I appreciate you. And we will go on with the show now. Let's have a look at our Fille du Roi number 332. Today's episode of Les Filles du Roi is episode 332, Anne Pelletier, dite Passavant. And I just sort of picked her out of her hat. I don't have her in my file, so let's get to know Anne a little bit better. Anne was born in 1643 in Dreux, France, which you can find in the region of Centre-Val de Loire. And inside of that region, she is part of the Eure-et-Loire department. And Dreux, you can actually see, is a big enough town that it is actually on the map. And it began life as a place called Duro-Cassium, which was home of Celtic tribes. In the Middle Ages, Dreux became the seat of a powerful county, tied to the royal family through Robert of Dreux, son of King Louis VI. Because of its location on the frontier, it saw plenty of battles and sieges. One of the most famous battles was the Battle of Dreux in 1562, during the French Wars of Religion. It was one of the very first big clashes between Catholics and Protestants, a brutal and costly fight. Later, Dreux became linked to the Orleans branch of the royal family, and the Royal Chapel of Dreux still holds the tombs of many princes and princesses. Today, Dreux is a modern city with industry and a diverse population, but it carries that long history of Celtic roots and medieval power, religious wars, and royal legacy, all in one place. Wouldn't it be amazing to visit this place? Just if this is your ancestry, oh my goodness. After her father's death, she would arrive on board the Jean-Baptiste de Dieppe on June 18, 1665. The groom that would select her and she would select, his name was Pierre Papin, and he was born in 1628 in a place called Sablé-sur-Sarthe. His parents were François Papin and Michel Lagnon. Sablé-sur-Sarthe is found in the Pays de la Loire, and it is part of the Sarthe region or the département of that location. It's about 25 miles southwest of Le Mans. And it grew up along the Sarthe River. Remember, Sablé-sur-Sarthe really honestly means Sablé on the Sarthe. So it really is along the river. So it made it a very important crossing and a place of trade. In medieval times, it was a fortified town and later became a marquisate tied closely to the powerful lords of Anjou and Maine. The town is also famous for its chateau, which is which began as a fortress, was later transformed into a grand residence in the 18th century. Now, Sablé became known for its marble quarries, its river, its commerce, and eventually for the buttery little cookies called Sablé that carry its name. At the heart of the community is the Church of Notre Dame. Now, the current church you see before you was built between 1887 and 1897, replacing the earlier parish church. Now, let's have a look at the enduring tribute of Sablé-sur-Sarthe, where we know about its river, the chateau, the cookies, and now Notre Dame. So this is where Pierre would come to us from. So what was happening in New France at that time is that Montreal was absolutely decimated. And by 1653, there were about 50 people still living on the island. It was not going to make it. And so the governor, Paul de Chomedy de Maisonneuve, decided to go to France and recruit 100 recruits, in essence, and said, I'll give you land. Please come and help make this land. This plaque that is currently in Montreal that you can look at has the names of all the people that came to Montreal and essentially saved the city. Pierre Papin's name is listed right there where I've circled it. He was part of this extraordinary ship that arrived in 1653 and began really creating the Montreal that we know today. So while Pierre arrived in 1653, he did not get married until 1665, the very tail end on December 12th of 1665. Now, obviously, Anne would have arrived, and this was her moment. And so I don't know exactly why he didn't get married before, but certainly he was very busy creating land. He received land from the governor, and he also served in the militia that was established in 1663 to guard Montreal before the big soldiers from Montreal arrived in 1665, actually. So he prepared, and finally Anne came to him. I like the fact that he was obviously waiting for something, and there she comes. The family would settle at Pointe-aux-Trembles. Now, Pointe-aux-Trembles was a municipality founded in 1674. There's a beautiful windmill that you can see on the bottom here, which was built in 1719. Its 3 stories make it the tallest windmill in Quebec at that point. In 1650, the Grou family of Rouen, France, established a land holding here, and Pointe-aux-Trembles was on the northeast of the island of Montreal. It was really 27 years after the foundation of Ville-Marie that the first concession of land in Pointe-aux-Trembles was given by the priests of the seminary of Saint-Sulpice of Ville-Marie. And Pointe-aux-Trembles, as you can see on the upper right here, is kind of located between the St. Lawrence and the Rivière de Prairie rivers, and it's exactly where they join. And you can see the Pointe-aux-Trembles is actually right at the tip of the island. It's a great strategic place. And the first land holdings occurred in 1669 and then 1670, and Pierre Papin and Anne were among the very, very first to basically establish themselves there. So if you are a descendant of this amazing couple, you can absolutely lay claim to being a pioneer of Pointe-aux-Trembles. Now, the very first church, L'Enfant Jésus, was built outside of Montreal itself. It was the very first church. And it was a stone church that measured about 36 feet by 24 feet, very small. And eventually, obviously, fires would happen, and then there would be another church and another church. But the church that stands there now is on the ground of the original one. They would go on to have 8 children. Pierre would be killed by the English in October of 1691 during the Phelps attack on the colony. Gilles would marry Françoise Chaperon and would have 3 children, all of whom would survive. Françoise's mother was fille du roi Nicole Tirmont, who we have not yet profiled. Gilles would then marry Joseph Bénard and would have 2 children, both of whom would make it to adulthood. Then we have Elisabeth, who would marry Charles Demers and would have 5 children, all of whom would make it to adulthood. Marianne would tragically die at age 15, apparently drowning while swimming. Francois, we do not have any more information on. Catherine would pass away in infancy. Jean would also die at age 5. And then Suzanne would die at age 9. Very, very tragic. So basically, in order to have, if you are descendant and are related, it would be Gilles or Elisabeth would be your direct line. In the 1681 census, we find Pierre and Anne, their children, Pierre, Gilles, Elisabeth, Marie, François, Catherine, and Jean. They have 1 gun, 4 bêtes à cornes, that's about 4 goats or 4 corned animals, and 10 arpents malheurs, about 8 acres of land. Tragically, Anne would pass away at the age of 43 in 1686. She and Pierre would have been married 21 years. She would leave us, though, with 47 descendants. Pierre would try to carry on. 5 years after Anne passed away and his eldest son was killed, Pierre gave up his power, returning to Gilles, his oldest and only son. He wanted to return to his homeland with a pension. Gilles would pay him from those funds. His children intervened and tried to get him not to go. We do not have any evidence if he went to France, but we do know that he returned to Canada. And finally, in April of 1715, he would pass away. He was about 87 years of age. Interesting that he never remarried. I'm always so sad when a woman has to leave the story and also the life, because then I know that her life was cut short usually by childbirth. Let's get real. But sometimes it was, just the different plagues and the different epidemics that occurred during that time as well. But it was a hard life, and we are so grateful to Anne for having come to this shore, however brief, because her descendants still lay claim to the legacy that she left behind. So thank you, Anne, for giving us that gift. And thank you to my patrons, supporters, and subscribers. You are the wind beneath my wings. Thank you ever so very, very much. And with that being said, I will say au revoir until the next episode.